My name is Clara Reynolds, and I was 26 when the words, worthless daughter, became more than just a cruel nickname whispered behind my back. They became a brand, a scar I carried every time I walked into a room filled with my own family. You would think that blood would bind people together, that parents and siblings would stand by you through every storm, but in my house, blood was just a measuring stick. And I was always measured short. My father, Jonathan Reynolds, was a man larger than life. A self-made businessman who had turned a small local construction company into one of the most successful development firms in the state. People respected him, admired him, sometimes even feared him. But inside the four walls of our home, his approval was a prize that only two people seemed worthy of, my older brother Daniel and my younger sister, Amelia. Daniel, 30 and confident, was the golden child. He was everything my father wanted in a son, ambitious, ruthless in business, and already sitting at the boardroom table of Reynolds and Company. My father looked at him as the continuation of his own legacy. Then there was Amelia, 23, the baby of the family. Beautiful, charming, and manipulative in ways that no one seemed to notice except me. To my father, she was the jewel of the family, always pampered, always protected. And then there was me, Clara, the middle child, the disappointment, the one who didn't follow the script. I had chosen literature over business, writing over finance. My degree in English had been a point of mockery at every family dinner. What will you do with books? Daniel sneered once, his wine glass tilting lazily in his hand. You'll end up teaching at some community college for pennies. My father hadn't corrected him. He'd simply nodded, as though my brother's cruel words carried truth he agreed with. I can still remember the night it all crystallized for me, when the weight of being worthless sank so deeply into my bones that I thought I'd never climb out of it. It was my mother's birthday, and the entire family had gathered in the grand dining hall of our house, the kind of room with chandeliers that sparkled like stars and a table so long you could barely see the person sitting at the other end. My father was at the head, naturally, with my mother beside him, and the rest of us scattered like planets in orbit around their authority. Dinner had been pleasant enough until my father raised his glass and made one of his famous toasts. To my children, he said, his voice booming with pride. Daniel, the future of Reynolds and Company. Amelia, the light of this family. His gaze shifted then, settling on me, and for a moment I thought maybe, just maybe, he would find something kind to say. But instead, he added with a faint smirk, and Clara, well, every family needs balance, don't they? The laughter that followed wasn't cruel in volume, but it was sharp in meaning. Daniel chuckled, Amelia covered her lips with her hand, and even my mother looked away, her eyes dimmed with the embarrassment of having me as her daughter. I forced myself to smile, though inside, something crumbled. Balance. That was my role. Not success, not brilliance, not even love. Just balance. A filler. The daughter who didn't matter. After that, the phrase spread like wildfire. At parties, in private jokes, even in moments of anger, it became the label they used when they wanted to remind me of my place. Worthless daughter. I heard it so often that sometimes I caught myself whispering it when I looked in the mirror. But here's the thing about being pushed aside, ignored, or underestimated. You start noticing things others miss. You learn to read the silences, to understand the weight of what isn't said, and to find cracks in the armor of those who think they're untouchable. That's why I noticed the way my father grew quieter over the last year of his life. He was still strong, still commanding in public, but there was something different in the private moments. He spent more time in his study, more time writing letters, and sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, his hand lingered over a drawer in his desk, like whatever was inside weighed more than all his businesses combined. I didn't ask questions. No one did. In our house, questions were dangerous. They revealed curiosity, and curiosity could be used against you. But I stored the image in my mind, tucked it away like a puzzle piece waiting for the right time. That time came sooner than I expected. My father passed away in early spring, a sudden heart attack that left the entire city in shock. The funeral was massive. Politicians, business moguls, even celebrities came to pay their respects. But for me, Grief was complicated. I cried, yes, but not just for losing him. I cried for the words he never said, for the pride he never showed me, for the way I had always been invisible in his shadow. The will reading was scheduled 2 weeks later. Everyone knew what to expect. Daniel would inherit the company. Amelia would get the house in the Hamptons, the cars, the jewelry. And me? Well, I'd probably get a token sum, maybe enough to keep me from embarrassing the family name with poverty, but not enough to give me any real standing. That was the story everyone told, and I believed it, too. When the day came, we gathered in the lawyer's office, a sleek, glass-walled building downtown that smelled faintly of leather and coffee. Mr. Harris, my father's longtime attorney, sat at the head of the polished oak table, his silver hair neatly combed, his eyes sharp behind his glasses. Daniel leaned back in his chair with the arrogance of a man who already knew he was about to become CEO. Amelia twirled a strand of her hair, her lips painted the same shade of red as the heels tapping impatiently on the floor. My mother sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap, her grief hidden behind years of practiced composure. I sat at the end of the table, small and unimportant, just as they always made me feel. Mr. Harris cleared his throat, and the room fell silent. Jonathan Reynolds left behind a detailed will, which we will review today, he said. He began reading, his voice steady, naming each inheritance. As expected, Daniel received the company, Amelia the luxury assets, my mother the trust funds and estates. Then he paused, his eyes flickering briefly toward me. And for Clara, the air shifted. Daniel smirked, Amelia giggled under her breath. I braced myself for the token insult disguised as a gift. But instead, Mr. Harris pulled out a sealed envelope. Your father included a clause, separate from the rest of the will. He instructed me to read it aloud, in this room, in front of everyone. My heartbeat quickened. A clause? My father had gone out of his way to write something just for me? Mr. Harris broke the seal, unfolded the letter, and began to read. And in that moment, I realized nothing in my life would ever be the same again. Mr. Harris's voice was calm, almost clinical, but to me every word carried the weight of thunder. To my daughter, Clara Reynolds, he began. The room stilled. Daniel leaned forward, his smirk faltering, and Amelia stopped twirling her hair. My mother pressed her lips together as though bracing herself for something unpleasant. To the world, you have often been overlooked. Even in this family, I know you have carried the sting of words meant to diminish you. I have watched you endure, and while I did not always give you the acknowledgement you deserved, I want you to know this. I saw you. I saw your strength, your quiet dignity, your refusal to bend even when the weight was unbearable. My breath caught. My father had written those words? The same man who called me balance, who never defended me against their mockery? For a moment, I didn't know if I should be comforted or furious that he had waited until death to finally speak them. Mr. Harris continued, This is why I have entrusted you with something far greater than mere possessions. In my study desk, bottom left drawer, lies a sealed envelope marked with your name. Within it, you will find the details of my final gift, a responsibility I believe only you can bear. This clause ensures that what I have left for you cannot be contested, delayed, or hidden by anyone else. It is legally binding, and the others in this room have no power to undo it. The silence that followed was heavy, thick with shock and disbelief. Daniel was the first to break it. What is this? His voice dripped with incredulity. Dad leaves me the company, Amelia gets the assets, and Clara, the one who never lifted a finger for this family business, she gets some mysterious envelope. He let out a humorless laugh. This is absurd. Amelia chimed in, her tone sharp as glass. Dad probably left you some sentimental nonsense. Old letters, maybe his cufflinks. Don't get your hopes up, Clara. I ignored them, though my hands trembled in my lap. For years, they had convinced me I was invisible. Now, suddenly, all eyes were on me, and it felt like stepping into a spotlight I wasn't sure I was ready for. Mr. Harris folded the letter, his expression unreadable. Per your father's instructions, Clara is to retrieve the envelope herself. Until then, the specifics remain confidential. He looked at me directly. Miss Reynolds, I suggest you do this at your earliest convenience. The meeting concluded soon after, though not without tension. Daniel stormed out first, muttering curses under his breath. Amelia lingered long enough to throw me a smirk that wasn't so much amused as it was venomous, like she already planned to find a way to undermine me. My mother didn't say a word. She just walked past me, her perfume lingering in the air, leaving me with a coldness I had known since childhood. I sat there long after everyone else had gone, staring at the table, trying to process what had just happened. My father, distant, proud, unyielding, had left me something secret. Something meant only for me. For the first time in years, a flicker of worth stirred inside me. But it was tangled with confusion, suspicion, and the sting of too many old wounds. That night, I returned to the family estate. The house was quiet, almost too quiet without my father's commanding presence. Every creak of the wooden stairs echoed in the emptiness as I made my way to his study. I hadn't been in there since I was a child. It was his private domain, the place where he worked late into the night, cigar smoke curling toward the ceiling as deals were struck and empires built. The study smelled faintly of leather and aged wood, mixed with the ghost of his cologne. My hands shook as I approached the massive oak desk. I crouched down, pulled at the bottom left drawer, and there it was, an envelope, thick and sealed with wax, my name written across it in his handwriting. For a long moment, I just stared at it. My name, in his hand, as though this single envelope carried all the words he never said when he was alive. I broke the seal. Inside was not just one letter, but several documents, neatly stacked. The first page was handwritten. Clara, if you are reading this, it means I am gone. I need you to understand something about our family, about Reynolds and Company, and about why I have chosen you. This will not be easy, and it will not make sense immediately, but trust me when I say, you are the only one who can do this. I swallowed hard, my eyes burning as I read on. Daniel is ambitious, but his greed will destroy him if unchecked. Amelia is clever, but her vanity blinds her to responsibility. Your mother, she was never strong enough to stand against them. But you, though they called you worthless, though even I failed to defend you, you have the one quality this family desperately needs: integrity. For that reason, I have named you trustee of a controlling interest in Reynolds and Company. 41% of the shares are now in your name, protected by legal clause. Daniel cannot overrule you. Amelia cannot sell you out. The company cannot move without your approval. I gasped, nearly dropping the paper. 41%? Controlling interest? Me, the worthless daughter, now held the power to decide the fate of everything my father had built. The letter went on, outlining how the shares were locked into my name, how any attempt to challenge the clause would result in severe penalties for my siblings. There were instructions about trusted advisors, notes about secret accounts, even letters of recommendation from partners who apparently respected my father enough to trust his choice. Tears blurred my vision. For so long, I had believed I was invisible to him. Yet here, in his final words, he not only acknowledged me, he entrusted me with everything. But then the weight of it crashed onto me. This wasn't just an inheritance. It was a war he had dropped into my lap. Daniel would never accept me as the one holding the reins. Amelia would see this as betrayal. My mother would likely side with them, as she always had. And me? I had no business degree, no experience in corporate strategy. Just words, stories, and a quiet resilience that had kept me alive through years of neglect. I folded the letter back into the envelope, my hands shaking. I could hear my siblings' voices already, mocking, furious, vengeful. They would come for me. They would fight, manipulate, maybe even destroy me if it meant keeping their empire. For the first time, though, I felt something I hadn't in years: power. Terrifying, dangerous, exhilarating power. The next morning, I went to Mr. Harris's office. He was waiting, as though he had expected me. His lips curled into the faintest smile when I handed him the letter. "So you've read it," he said. I nodded. He gave me control. You understand what that means?
His gaze was steady.
It means Daniel will come after me. Amelia, too. My voice shook, but there was steel in it. It also means, Mr. Harris said slowly, that you now have the opportunity to redefine who you are in this family. You are no longer the daughter on the margins, Clara. You are the one holding the pen that writes the next chapter. The weight of his words sank deep. For years, I had lived as the worthless daughter, diminished and silenced. Now, I was the key holder to the empire they believed belonged only to them. That evening, the phone calls began. Daniel first. His voice thundered through the receiver. You think this changes anything? You're not cut out for this, Clara. You'll destroy the company in a week. Hand it over, and maybe I'll make sure you get something out of it. Then Amelia. Her tone was sweet, saccharine, dripping with manipulation. Clara, darling, let's not fight. You don't want this responsibility. Let Daniel handle the company, and you can, we'll make sure you're comfortable. Isn't that what you want? And finally, my mother. Her voice was soft, tired. Clara, don't make trouble. Your father didn't know what he was doing. This will only cause pain for all of us. Give Daniel the control. Please. One by one, they came at me. And for the first time, I didn't shrink.
I didn't bend.
I listened, I said nothing, and when they hung up, I stared out the window at the night sky. They still thought I was worthless. That much hadn't changed. But they didn't realize something yet. The worthless daughter was about to become their biggest threat.
I didn't sleep much that week.
Every time I closed my eyes, I heard their voices echoing in my head. Daniel's fury, Amelia's honeyed manipulation, my mother's weary plea. They wanted me to surrender before I even understood what I had. To them, I was still the same Clara, hesitant, overlooked, easy to silence. But my father's words in that letter kept pulling me back. You are the only one who can do this. I didn't know if he was right, but I knew one thing. If I gave in now, I would prove them right. I'd be worthless all over again. So I stayed up late, reading everything in that envelope, poring over shareholder structures, bylaws, legal clauses. I barely understood half of it at first. But I forced myself through the jargon, making notes, Googling terms, piecing together what 41% actually meant. Slowly, the fog cleared. My father hadn't just handed me shares, he had given me veto power. Any major decision the company made, I had to approve. Daniel could rage all he wanted, but without me, he couldn't move a single brick. That realization was both terrifying and intoxicating. A week later, I received the official summons. A board meeting at Reynolds and Company. Daniel had called it, no doubt intending to correct what my father had done. Amelia, of course, would be there too. I almost didn't go. I wanted to run, to hide, to let them destroy themselves without dragging me into it. But then I thought of my father's study, of his neat handwriting spelling out my name, and I knew I had to face them. The headquarters was a glass and steel tower downtown, sleek and modern, the kind of place that made people straighten their shoulders when they walked through the doors. I hadn't been there since I was a child, back when my father occasionally let me sit in the corner of his office with a book while he worked. Now, walking into the boardroom as an adult, I felt like an imposter in my own skin. The room was buzzing when I entered. Men in suits, women in pencil skirts, laptops glowing, coffee cups steaming. Daniel sat at the head of the table like a king on his throne, his tie perfectly knotted, his jaw tight with authority. Amelia lounged beside him, radiant in a silk blouse, her smile sharp and sweet. When they saw me, their expressions barely shifted, but I caught it, the flicker of disdain, the unspoken "What are you doing here?" Clara, Daniel said, his voice polite but dripping with false warmth. Glad you could join us. Please sit. I took a chair near the middle, my heart pounding. The meeting began. Daniel launched into a presentation about expanding Reynolds and Company into a risky overseas project, massive luxury towers in a volatile economy. The board nodded along, impressed by his confidence, dazzled by his numbers. Amelia chimed in occasionally, reinforcing his points, her words like honey poured over poison. Then came the vote. All in favor? Daniel asked, his eyes sweeping the room. Hands shot up around the table. Daniel's smirk grew. Against? I raised my hand. The room froze. Daniel blinked, as though he couldn't quite process what he was seeing. Clara, he said slowly, you don't understand what's at stake here. This project. I understand enough. I interrupted, my voice trembling but steady. 41%. That means nothing goes forward without my approval. Gasps fluttered around the table. Daniel's face darkened, a storm brewing beneath his polished surface. You're making a mistake, he hissed. No, I said, forcing myself to meet his gaze. I'm doing what Dad wanted. I won't let you gamble away the company he built. The silence that followed was deafening. The board members glanced between us, unsure where the power truly lay. Finally, Daniel slammed his laptop shut. Meeting adjourned. He stood so abruptly that his chair scraped against the floor, the sound like a blade against stone. Amelia followed, her eyes glinting with fury. As they swept out, I sat frozen in my chair, my hands clenched so tightly my knuckles were white. I had done it. I had stood my ground. For the first time in my life, I had told them no. But I knew this was only the beginning. That night, I found an envelope slipped under my apartment door. No return address. Inside was a single piece of paper with one sentence typed in bold letters. You're playing a dangerous game, Clara. I stared at it for a long time, my stomach churning. Who had sent it? Daniel trying to intimidate me? Amelia, weaving her manipulative games? Or someone else entirely? Whoever it was, the message was clear. I wasn't just stepping into their world. I was stepping into their war. The following days were chaos. Daniel called repeatedly, demanding I reconsider. Amelia showed up at my apartment with a bottle of wine and a syrupy smile, trying to persuade me that we could work together. My mother sent a letter begging me not to tear the family apart. But beneath their words, I could feel the contempt, the disbelief that I would actually hold the line. And with each attempt to sway me, my resolve hardened. Still, the pressure weighed heavy. I couldn't sleep, couldn't eat, couldn't stop replaying the boardroom scene in my head. Who was I to sit at that table? Who was I to hold power over men who had spent decades building careers? I was just Clara, the one who wrote essays and read novels, the one who never mattered. Then one night, I remembered something. My father's voice, not from the letter, but from years ago, when I was maybe 12. I had come home crying after a teacher dismissed one of my essays as too sentimental. My father had found me in the kitchen, scribbling furiously in my notebook, tears smudging the ink. He hadn't said much. He rarely did, but he placed a hand on my shoulder and murmured, "Don't ever let anyone tell you words don't matter, Clara. They're the only thing that ever lasts." I had forgotten that moment until now. Forgotten that, in his own distant way, he had once believed in me. And maybe, just maybe, this clause, this inheritance, was his way of reminding me again. So I kept going. I started attending more board meetings, sitting quietly at first, then asking questions, then pushing back. I spent hours with Mr. Harris, learning about corporate law, contracts, shareholder rights. I met with managers, listened to employees, walked through construction sites. The more I learned, the more I realized how reckless Daniel had been, how superficial Amelia's charm truly was. They hated me for it. I could see it in their eyes every time I blocked one of their schemes, every time I asked questions they couldn't answer. The whispers started. Clara doesn't belong here. She's ruining everything. The worthless daughter is out of her depth. And maybe they were right. Maybe I was out of my depth. But I also knew this. They weren't half as invincible as they thought. One evening, after another long day at the office, I received a call from an unknown number. When I answered, a voice on the other end said softly, "Clara Reynolds?" "Yes," I replied cautiously. "This is Michael Torres. I used to work with your father. We need to talk, off the record." I frowned. About what? About why he gave you those shares. About the truth Daniel and Amelia don't want you to find out. The line went dead. I sat there in my apartment, the city lights glowing through the window, my heart pounding with both fear and curiosity. What truth? What had my father seen or known that he had hidden from the rest of them? And why was I the one holding the key now?
I didn't know yet.
But I knew this much. My father's secret clause wasn't just about inheritance. It was about something deeper, something dangerous. And if I wanted to survive this war, I would have to uncover it before my own family destroyed me first. The morning after my confrontation with my sister, I woke up to the sound of birds outside my window, the sunlight leaking through the thin curtains in streaks of gold. But the beauty of the day was lost on me. My chest felt heavy, weighed down by everything that had been said the night before. My family had always had cracks, but now the fracture lines were deep and jagged. There was no way to smooth them over anymore. I dragged myself out of bed and padded toward the kitchen, hoping a strong cup of coffee might clear the fog from my mind. But instead of peace, I was met with the sight of my parents sitting stiffly at the dining table, papers spread out before them. My mother's face was pale, her lips tight. My father looked like he hadn't slept a wink. The tension was thick enough to choke on. "Sit," my father said without looking up. His tone wasn't a request, it was a command. Confused, I pulled out a chair. "What's going on?" My mother finally lifted her gaze. For a moment, I thought I saw regret flicker in her eyes, but it vanished quickly, replaced by something sharper. "Your sister told us everything." My stomach tightened. "Everything about what?" "About you," my father said flatly. "About your lies, your jealousy, and the way you've been manipulating this family." The word struck me like a slap.
What?
"That's not true." My sister stepped into the room then, her arms folded across her chest, a smug smile curving her lips. "Don't bother denying it." I told them the truth. "How you've been undermining me, trying to steal opportunities meant for me, and playing the victim every time you don't get your way." "That's a lie," I snapped, standing to face her. "You're the one who's been sabotaging me. You've been jealous of me for years, and now you're twisting everything to make me look like the problem." But my parents didn't respond. They sat in silence, their eyes fixed on the papers in front of them. When I glanced down, I saw they weren't just random sheets. They were documents. Bank statements. Property records. Legal papers with my name scribbled across them. "What is this?" I asked, my voice trembling. My father finally looked at me, his expression cold. "This is proof of how much we've sacrificed for you. The money we've spent. The debts we've taken on because of your selfish decisions. Your sister showed us everything." I felt like the floor had vanished beneath me. My sister had gone digging, twisting half-truths into a weapon. She must have combed through every financial record she could find, taking things out of context to paint me as a leech on the family. "I never asked you for any of that," I whispered, my throat tight. "But you took it," my mother hissed. "Every time. And now you stand here, blaming your sister, when all she's ever done is protect this family from your recklessness." My hands shook as I gripped the edge of the table. The unfairness of it all burned in my chest like fire. "She's lying. Can't you see that? She's setting me up." But my words fell on deaf ears. My parents had already made up their minds. "You need to leave," my father said finally. "This house is no longer yours." The room spun. "What?" "You heard me," he said. "Pack your things and go. We're done enabling you." I turned to my mother, searching for some shred of compassion, but she only looked away. My sister, meanwhile, stood in the corner, her eyes gleaming with satisfaction. She had won, at least for now. The next few hours were a blur. I stuffed my belongings into bags, my hands trembling as I moved through the house I had grown up in, the house that had always been my anchor. Now it was foreign, hostile, no longer mine. My sister followed me from room to room, her voice low and taunting. "This is what happens when you cross me," she whispered as I zipped my suitcase shut. "You should have known better." I wanted to scream, to claw back the truth, but I knew it would be useless. My parents had chosen their side. The betrayal cut deeper than I could put into words. By evening, I was gone. I found myself standing in the street with nothing but 2 suitcases and a backpack, the door slamming shut behind me. The cool air bit at my skin, but the real chill was inside me. I had been cast out, abandoned by the very people who were supposed to protect me. But as I walked away, my anger began to harden into something else, something sharper. My sister thought she had destroyed me. She thought she had won. She was wrong. That night, as I lay on the stiff mattress of a cheap motel, I made a vow to myself. I would not let her get away with this. I would rebuild piece by piece, and when I was ready, I would make sure the truth came out. My revenge wouldn't be loud or messy. It would be quiet, precise, and devastating. And as I drifted off into a restless sleep, one thought echoed in my mind: she has no idea what's coming. The next morning, I woke to the sound of my phone buzzing. A message lit up the screen, an unknown number, no name attached. The words made my blood run cold. I know what your sister did.
Meet me tonight.
Don't tell anyone. The message glared at me from my phone screen, simple and chilling. I know what your sister did. Meet me tonight. Don't tell anyone. For a long moment, I just stared at it, my heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Who would send something like that? A prank? A trap? Or someone who actually knew the truth? I read it again and again, every word twisting deeper into my chest. After everything my sister had done, after being thrown out of my own home, branded as the liar, the manipulator, could it be possible that someone else had seen through her? But suspicion was second nature to me now. Whoever this was, they wanted me alone. In the dark, vulnerable. I wasn't naive enough to believe it blindly. Still, a part of me, the part that had been screaming for vindication, ached to find out. I typed a cautious reply. Who are you? What do you know? The dots appeared almost instantly. Whoever they were waiting. No names. Just trust me. Tonight, 9 p.m. Old train station on Mill Road. My fingers trembled over the screen. Mill Road. The old train station hadn't been in use for years. The city had abandoned it when they built the new line, and now it stood half-collapsed, its windows shattered, its walls covered in graffiti. Not exactly the kind of place you'd choose for a friendly chat. Every instinct in me screamed danger. But my anger was louder. If this was someone who could expose my sister, if this was my one chance to claw back the truth, I couldn't ignore it. I spent the day pacing the small motel room, weighing the risks. My mind wouldn't stop running through scenarios. Was it someone from my past? An old friend who had overheard something? Or worse, was it a setup, orchestrated by my sister herself? By 8 p.m., I made up my mind. If I didn't go, I'd spend the rest of my life wondering what might have happened. I couldn't afford hesitation. I pulled on a black hoodie and jeans, something simple, something that wouldn't make me stand out. I tucked a small pocket knife into my bag, not much, but enough to give me a sense of control. My reflection in the mirror looked almost like a stranger, tired eyes, clenched jaw, a woman stripped of everything but determination. The streets were nearly empty as I made my way to Mill Road. Each step felt heavier than the last, but I forced myself forward, the hum of passing cars fading as I moved deeper into the industrial part of town. The train station loomed ahead, a skeleton of what it once was. Rusted metal beams jutted into the night sky, the cracked concrete littered with weeds. A single street lamp flickered near the entrance, throwing long, jagged shadows across the ground. I paused, every nerve in my body on high alert. My phone buzzed. Another message. Inside. I swallowed hard and stepped forward, the sound of gravel crunching beneath my boots. The air smelled of dust and rust, sharp in my nose. The inside was worse, cold, damp, and echoing. My footsteps bounced off the walls, too loud in the emptiness. I pulled my hood tighter, scanning the darkness. Hello. My voice cracked against the silence. Who's there? For a moment, nothing. Then a shadow shifted near the far wall. My hand shot to my bag, gripping the knife. Relax, a voice said. Male, low, steady. I'm not here to hurt you. A figure stepped into the weak beam of light coming through a broken window. He was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a dark jacket and a cap pulled low. His face was half hidden, but I caught the gleam of sharp eyes watching me carefully. "Who are you?" I demanded. "Someone who's seen what your sister really is," he said simply. My breath caught. "What do you mean?" He reached into his jacket slowly and pulled out a manila envelope. He held it up, then set it down on the cracked bench beside him. "This has everything you need."
Proof.
"But if you want it, you'll have to trust me." I hesitated, my pulse racing. "Why would you help me?" He let out a short, humorless laugh. "Because your sister ruined my life too." The words sent a jolt through me.
What?
He tilted his head, finally letting the light catch more of his face. He looked to be in his early 30s, with stubble across his jaw and lines of exhaustion carved deep into his skin. "I knew her before all this," he said. "Before she decided she was better than everyone else. She destroyed my career, my family, and now she's doing the same to you." I stared at him, my mind spinning. Was he telling the truth? Or was this just another layer of manipulation? I stepped closer to the bench, my eyes on the envelope. "What's in there?" I asked. "Evidence," he said. "Records. Messages. Things she never wanted anyone to see." I reached for it, but his hand shot out, stopping me. His grip was firm, his gaze unflinching. "Not here," he said. "If you want this, you'll have to come with me." Every muscle in my body tensed. My instinct screamed at me to run. But then I thought of my sister's smirk as I left the house, of my parents' cold eyes, of the crushing weight of injustice pressing down on me. If this man was telling the truth, this could be my chance to destroy her. "Where?" I asked. He let go of my arm and stepped back into the shadows. "Somewhere safe. Tomorrow night. I'll text you the address." Before I could respond, he slipped away, his footsteps fading into the dark. I stood frozen, my hand trembling as I picked up the envelope. When I finally forced myself to open it, my breath hitched. Inside were printed screenshots of emails, dozens of them, sent from my sister's account. Messages full of lies, schemes, and manipulations, painting me as unstable, untrustworthy, a parasite. They weren't just sent to my parents. They were forwarded to other relatives, neighbors, even potential employers. She hadn't just poisoned my family against me. She had tried to erase me completely. My chest tightened as I flipped through the pages, bile rising in my throat. This wasn't paranoia. This was calculated destruction. And now I had proof. I stumbled back to the motel, clutching the envelope like it was oxygen. Sleep was impossible. My thoughts ricocheted in every direction.
Who was that man?
Why had he risked exposing himself? And most importantly, how could I use this to finally turn the tables on my sister? But just as my anger started to harden into resolve, my phone buzzed again. Another message, this time from an unknown number different than before. It read, "Be careful. He's not who you think he is." I froze, the envelope still open on the bed. My heart hammered in my chest as a horrifying thought clawed its way into my mind. If my sister wasn't the one setting me up, then who was? The second message haunted me like a whisper in the dark. "Be careful. He's not who you think he is." I stared at it for what felt like hours, my mind spinning itself into knots.
Who had sent it?
Was it someone who genuinely wanted to protect me, or was this just another layer of the twisted game I'd somehow been dragged into? I picked up the envelope again, flipping through the printed emails, my stomach twisting at every word. My sister's voice stripped through them, cruel and deliberate. Each line was a dagger meant for me, crafted to pierce not only my reputation but my very existence. She hadn't stopped at tearing me down in the family. She had gone beyond, circling through the corners of my life I hadn't even realized she could reach. But that second message gnawed at me. Could this man, the stranger at the station, really be trusted? He had been vague, careful, too careful. He hadn't even told me his name. And still, he had dangled the truth like bait, forcing me to follow him if I wanted more. I barely slept that night. I lay awake on the creaky motel bed, every sound amplified, the hum of the old refrigerator, the distant bark of a stray dog, even my own uneven breathing. My chest felt tight, as though invisible hands were pressing down, demanding I make a choice: follow the stranger deeper into his world, or cut ties before it was too late. By morning, exhaustion had settled into my bones, but my anger burned hotter than ever. If he was lying, I would find out. If he was telling the truth, I couldn't afford to walk away. At noon, my phone buzzed again. Another text from the stranger. Tonight, 10 p.m., 47, Hollow Street. Bring the envelope. Come alone. Hollow Street. The name itself sounded like a warning. I looked it up quickly. It was in the older part of town, where abandoned factories and warehouses sat like ghosts of another era. My chest tightened again. But then I thought of my sister. Her smile. Her poison. And I couldn't ignore it. By evening, I was pacing again, my nerves shredded thin. I packed the envelope into my bag, along with the knife, and made my way across town. The streets were mostly deserted, the kind of silence that prickled at your skin. When I reached Hollow Street, the buildings loomed tall and hollow-eyed, their windows boarded up, their walls cracked and decayed. Number 47 was worse than the rest. A warehouse, its metal doors rusted, its paint peeled. A single light flickered above the entrance. My phone buzzed. Inside. I pushed the heavy door open, the screech echoing too loud in the cavernous space. The air smelled of dust and old oil, the kind of scent that clung to your throat. Shadows crawled over the walls as I stepped in, my pulse hammering in my ears. Then I saw him, the stranger from the train station. Standing in the middle of the warehouse, a dim bulb overhead casting a shadow long and sharp. "You came," he said simply, his tone unreadable. I clutched the strap of my bag. "I want answers." He nodded once. "You'll have them." I stepped closer, my eyes flicking to the edges of the warehouse. Empty. Too empty. "What's her name?" I asked. A faint smile tugged at his lips, though it didn't reach his eyes. "Names complicate things. Just know I was one of your sister's mistakes." I hated how vague he was, how carefully he dodged every detail. But the envelope weighed in my bag, a reminder of the proof he had already given me. "You said she ruined your life," I pressed.
How?
For the first time, his expression darkened. His jaw tightened, his fists clenched. "She lied," he said. "She lied and took everything from me. My job, my family, my future. She's poison, and you know it. You've lived it." I swallowed hard. "Then why not go to the police? Why not expose her yourself?" "Because she's protected," he said sharply. "You've seen it. Everyone believes her. She's built a wall of lies so high no one dares to question her. But together, we can tear it down." The intensity in his eyes was almost too much, like standing too close to a fire. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe anyone who could see through her. But the second message clawed at my mind. "He's not who you think he is." I took a step back, my voice shaking. "Then why now? Why me?" His gaze softened slightly, though it didn't make me feel safer. "Because you're the only one left who still has something to lose. And that makes you dangerous to her." Before I could respond, a sound echoed through the warehouse, a creak, faint but sharp, like a footstep. My blood ran cold. The stranger stiffened, his eyes darting toward the shadows. "Did you bring someone?" he hissed. "No," I said quickly, panic rising in my throat. "I came alone." Another creak. Then another. The stranger's hand went to his jacket, and I realized with a jolt that he was armed. A glint of metal caught the dim light as he pulled out a gun. My heart nearly stopped. "Stay behind me," he ordered, his voice low but firm. Fear gripped me, but before I could react, a figure stepped out of the darkness. A woman, slim, dressed in black, her face partially hidden under a hood. The stranger's grip on the gun tightened. "You followed her," he snarled. The woman raised her hand slowly, her voice calm, almost cold. "I followed you." My stomach dropped. Her voice, I knew that voice. I staggered back, my heart hammering. "Who are you?" The woman lowered her hood, and my blood froze in my veins. It was my sister. Her eyes locked on mine, a smirk curving her lips, the kind I'd seen 1,000 times before, the kind that told me I was already too late. The stranger's gun didn't waver. My sister tilted her head, her gaze flicking between the two of us. "Well," she said softly, almost playfully, "isn't this interesting?" And in that moment, I realized I was caught in a trap, so deep I might never crawl out. For a heartbeat, the warehouse was frozen in time. My sister stood across from me, her hood down, her smile sharp as broken glass. The stranger gripped his gun tightly, his eyes flicking between us, torn between rage and caution. And me? I was caught dead in the middle, my breath shallow, my mind screaming for a way out. "Well," my sister drawled, her voice dripping with amusement, "I have to say, I didn't expect you to take the bait quite so easily. I thought you had at least some sense of self-preservation left." My throat went dry. You set this up?" She tilted her head, mock sympathy painting her expression. "Of course I did. Do you really think anyone else cares enough about you to help?" "No, darling. The only reason you're here is because I wanted you here." The stranger snarled, his gun swinging toward her. "You destroyed my life, and now you're going to pay." My sister's smirk didn't falter. "Oh, please. You're pathetic. A little pawn who thought he could outsmart me." She glanced at me, her eyes glittering. "And you? You've always been the easiest to manipulate. Always so desperate for someone to believe in you." Her words sliced through me, raw and merciless. But this time I didn't flinch. Not completely. Something inside me had hardened since the night I left home, since I found those poisoned emails, since I walked into this warehouse knowing I might not walk out. "You're wrong," I said quietly, surprising even myself with the steadiness of my voice. "I don't need you to believe in me anymore. And I don't need to prove myself to you either." The stranger's eyes darted to me, confusion flickering in them, but I kept my gaze locked on my sister. She laughed, a sharp, cruel sound. Oh, listen to her. Finding her voice at last, she took a step forward, her movements deliberate, calculated. "But you're still nothing, sister. And you always will be." The stranger's patience snapped. He raised the gun, his finger tightening on the trigger. "Shut up," he shouted. "Wait," I yelled, instinct driving me between them. The cold barrel of the gun was inches from my chest. My hands shook, but I refused to move. "Killing her won't fix what she did to you. It won't fix anything." He shook his head violently, his eyes wild. "You don't understand. She ruined everything. She took everything. She has to pay." "And then what?" I demanded, my voice rising. "You kill her and what? Your life magically goes back to normal? You think that's justice?" His arm trembled, the gun wavering. For a moment, I saw the fractured man beneath the anger, the exhaustion, the ruin. My sister scoffed, her arms folding. "Oh, for God's sake. Are we really doing this? You're both pathetic. Neither of you has the guts to do what needs to be done." I turned to her, my fury boiling over. "You think you've won, don't you? That you've controlled everything, manipulated everyone. But I have proof now. I have your emails, your lies. Everything you've done, it's over." Her smirk faltered for the briefest second, a flicker of doubt passing over her features. Then it was gone, replaced by that same icy confidence. "You think anyone will believe you?" she sneered. "I've already destroyed your reputation. You're nothing but a desperate, bitter liar. You'll wave those papers around, and everyone will laugh in your face." Maybe once, those words would have gutted me. But not now. Not anymore. I felt the anger sharpen into something solid, something unbreakable. "Maybe they will," I said. "Maybe they won't. But I'll keep fighting. I'll keep showing the truth until there's nothing left of your lies to hide behind. You don't get to decide who I am anymore." The silence that followed was deafening. My sister's eyes narrowed, her facade cracking at the edges. The stranger lowered the gun slightly, his breathing heavy, torn between hatred and hesitation. Then, suddenly, sirens wailed in the distance. All three of us froze. The sound grew louder, closer, the blue and red glow seeping through the cracks in the warehouse walls. My stomach dropped. Someone had called the police. The stranger's eyes widened in panic. No, no, not now. He shoved the gun back into his jacket and backed away. This isn't over. Not yet. Before I could stop him, he bolted toward the side door, disappearing into the shadows. My sister and I were left alone, the sirens screaming louder, the light flashing against her pale face. For the first time, I saw fear in her eyes. Real fear. "This is your fault," she hissed, her voice trembling at the edges. "You brought them here." I shook my head slowly.
No.
"You did this to yourself." The warehouse doors burst open, officers flooding in, their shouts filling the space. My sister's face twisted in rage as they closed in around us, but I stood tall, the envelope clutched in my hand like a shield. For once, I wasn't the one cowering. Hours later, I sat in a sterile police station, the envelope spread across the desk in front of an officer. They flipped through the pages, their eyes widening, their pens scratching notes furiously. My sister sat across the hall, her arms restrained, her face pale and drawn. The mask she had worn for so long was gone, stripped away under the harsh fluorescent lights. It wasn't easy. It wasn't instant. But piece by piece, the truth began to unravel. The emails, the testimonies, the lies she had built her empire on crumbled under the weight of evidence she could no longer deny. For once, I wasn't the one on trial.
She was.
Weeks passed, then months, and slowly life began to shift. My parents, so blind for so long, started to see. Guilt carved into their faces when they visited me, apologies spilling clumsily from their lips. It didn't fix the years of hurt, but it was something.
And me?
I wasn't the worthless daughter anymore. I was the survivor, the fighter, the one who refused to be erased. But even now, when I close my eyes at night, I see the stranger's face, the fury in his eyes, the promise in his voice. This isn't over. And deep down, I know he's right. My sister may be gone, her empire in ruins, but the echoes of her betrayal linger. The wars she started may be over, but the scars she left behind, they'll never fade. Still, I'm not afraid anymore, because now I know the truth. I was never worthless, and I never will be again.